It was a cold day in February 1957. A young man was out in the woods in Fox Chase, a neighborhood in Philadelphia. He was checking his muskrat traps. But he found something else, something that would stick with him for the rest of his life. He saw a large cardboard box. Inside, a small boy lay naked, wrapped in a blanket. The boy was dead. The young man was scared. He didn't want to get involved with the... So he left. He went home and said nothing. A few days passed. He couldn't shake the image. He drove back out there. The boy was still there, still in the box. Around the same time, another man was driving down the road. He saw a rabbit run into the woods. He pulled over, got out of his car, and followed it. That's when he saw the box. He walked closer. He looked inside. He saw the boy. This man did not walk away. He called the police. When the police arrived, they saw a scene that would haunt the city of Philadelphia for decades. The box was a bassinet box from a J.C. Penney store. The boy inside was small for his age, maybe 4 or 5 years old. He was pale and thin. He looked malnourished. His body was covered in bruises, old and new. There were small surgical scars on his ankle and groin. His hair was crudely cut, short and choppy, and clumps of his own hair were scattered on his body. It looked like someone had cut it right after he died, or maybe just before. The investigators had a body, they had a crime scene, but they had no name. They had no idea who this little boy was. This was the beginning of a mystery that would become known as the case of the boy in the box. He would also be called America's Unknown Child. The first step was to identify him. The police took his fingerprints, they sent them to the FBI, and to hospitals all over the country. There were no matches. No child with those fingerprints was registered anywhere. They checked his dental records. Again, nothing. It was as if he had never existed in any official capacity. So they turned to the public, they made a poster. It was heartbreaking. On one side was a picture of the boy as he was found lying on a slab. On the other was a retouched photo, an artist's idea of what he might have looked like in life. They made him look cleaned up, with a neat haircut, looking straight at the camera. He looked like any other little boy you might see playing in a park. The police hoped anyone would recognize him. A neighbor, a distant relative, a shopkeeper. The posters went up everywhere. In post offices, in police stations, in grocery stores. The Philadelphia Inquirer newspaper printed hundreds of thousands of copies and put them in every gas bill sent out in the city. The story went national. Everyone heard about the boy in the box, but no one came forward. No one reported a missing child that matched his description. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The little boy remained nameless. The autopsy gave them some clues about his short, hard life. The medical examiner confirmed he was severely malnourished. The cause of death was blunt force trauma. He had been hit in the head multiple times. This wasn't an accident. This was murder. The bruises all over his body told a story of sustained abuse. The strange haircut was a puzzle. Was it a punishment, an attempt to disguise him? They didn't know. With no identification, the investigation stalled. Leads came in, but they all went nowhere. The police chased down hundreds of dead ends. They checked orphanages and homes for children. They looked into cases of missing children from other states, even other countries. Nothing fit. The boy in the box seemed to have come from nowhere. The investigators who worked the case in those early days never forgot him. It got under their skin. How could a child just disappear without anyone noticing? Without anyone caring enough to report him missing, they had seen many terrible things in their careers. But this was different. This was a child who had been erased. Years passed. The original investigators grew old and retired. Some passed away, but the case file remained open. New detectives would pick it up, read through the old reports, look at the sad photos, and feel the same sense of frustration and duty. The boy was buried in a potter's field, a public grave for the unclaimed and unknown. His gravestone was simple. It just said, "Heavenly Father, bless this unknown boy." One of the first major theories came from a psychic. It sounds strange, but in a case this cold, police were willing to listen to anyone. The psychic, a woman from New Jersey, told an investigator named Remington Bristow about a foster home. She said the house was near the place where the boy was found. Bristow was a determined man. He worked for the medical examiner's office and became obsessed with the case. He spent his own money and his own time trying to solve it. He followed the psychic's lead. He found a foster home located just a mile and a half from the discovery site. He started looking into the family that ran it. He went to an estate sale at the property after the foster father died. There, he saw a bassinet. It looked just like the one sold at J.C. Penney, the same kind of box the boy was found in. He also found blankets hanging on a clothesline that were similar to the one wrapped around the boy's body. It felt like a real lead. Bristow spoke to people who knew the family. He learned that the foster father had a stepdaughter. He believed this stepdaughter might have been the boy's mother. The story he pieced together was that the boy was her illegitimate child, and the family had kept him hidden away. His death was an accident, and they panicked and disposed of the body to avoid a scandal. It was a plausible theory. It explained why no one reported him missing. It explained the proximity to the dump site. But it was all circumstantial. There was no direct evidence. The stepdaughter denied it. Bristow believed it until the day he died, but he could never prove it. The police investigated it thoroughly, but they couldn't make an arrest. The foster home theory remained just that, a theory. Decades went by. The world changed. But the boy in the box remained a mystery. Then, in the late 1990s, another major lead emerged. It was a strange and disturbing story. A woman from Cincinnati, Ohio, contacted the police. She said she knew what happened. She identified herself only as M. M told investigators a detailed story. She said that when she was a teenager, her mother had bought a little boy from his parents. The boy's name, she said, was Jonathan. Her mother was a violent, abusive woman. She said her mother abused both her and the little boy terribly. She described how the boy had been kept in the basement of their home in Philadelphia. She said he was nonverbal and possibly had developmental issues. Her story became very specific. One evening, the boy vomited after eating a bowl of baked beans. Her mother became enraged. She picked the boy up and slammed his head against the floor over and over again. And then, she put him in the bathtub. M said he was either unconscious or already dead. Water was running over him. Her mother then cut his hair. According to M, her mother and a man who was sometimes around the house then took the boy's body out to the woods. She described them putting him in a box they found nearby. M said she was forced to go with them. She was terrified. She said she had been too scared to ever tell anyone. The story was shocking. It was detailed. It provided a name, a killer, a motive, and a narrative that seemed to fit the evidence. The boy was malnourished. He had been beaten. His hair was cut. The location M described was consistent with the Fox Chase area. The police took it very seriously. They went to the house M described. The house was gone, replaced by an apartment building. They couldn't excavate. The lead investigator on the case at the time, a detective named Tom Augustine, interviewed M for hours. He found her story compelling, but there was a problem. M had a long history of severe mental illness. Her story changed in some retellings. She was a troubled person, and it was hard to know what was real and what was a product of her own trauma and confusion. There was no physical evidence to back up her claims. Police couldn't find any records of a boy named Jonathan who matched the description. They couldn't find the man M mentioned. Her mother was dead. So, like the foster home theory, the story from M remained a tantalizing but unprovable possibility. It offered an explanation, but it didn't offer a conviction. It was another dead end, another chapter in a long book of frustration. By this time, a new generation of investigators was working the case, and they had a new tool, DNA. In 1998, the boy's body was exhumed from the potter's field. It was a solemn day. The people who had kept his memory alive were there. They took samples of his teeth and bone, hoping to create a DNA profile. The technology back then was not what it is today. They were able to extract some mitochondrial DNA, which is passed down from the mother. But it wasn't enough to identify him through a database. It could only be used to compare against a specific person if they ever found a potential relative. But the exhumation did lead to something positive. The boy was not returned to the potter's field. He was reburied in a proper cemetery, Ivy Hill Cemetery in Philadelphia. A man who owned the cemetery donated the plot. The public donated money for a beautiful casket and a large new headstone. This time, the headstone read, "America's Unknown Child." It also included a plea for his name. The city of Philadelphia had not forgotten him. He was their child, in a way. The case also attracted the attention of the Vidocq Society. This is a unique group of forensic professionals, retired detectives, FBI profilers, medical examiners, scientists. They meet once a month in Philadelphia to discuss cold cases. They volunteer their time and expertise to help law enforcement. The Boy in the Box became one of their most famous cases. They brought new energy, new ideas, and new resources to the investigation. They helped keep the story in the public eye. For another 2 decades, the case remained cold. The DNA sat in a lab. The theories were debated. The headstone in Ivy Hill Cemetery was visited by strangers who left flowers and toys. It seemed the boy's name would be lost to history forever, but then everything changed. Forensic science took a giant leap forward. A new technique called forensic genetic genealogy was developed. It was the same method used to catch the Golden State Killer and solve many other cold cases. Here's how it works. Investigators take the old DNA sample and use modern technology to build a much more detailed genetic profile. Then they upload that profile to public genealogy websites like GEmatch or Family Tree DNA. These are sites where people voluntarily upload their own DNA results from companies like 23andMe or Ancestry to find relatives. The goal isn't to find an exact match, it's to find distant relatives, second cousins, third cousins, fourth cousins once removed. Once they find a few of these distant cousins, the real work begins. Genealogists, experts in building family trees, start to trace the DNA match's ancestry back in time. They look for a common set of great-great-grandparents. Once they find that shared ancestral couple, they start building the family tree forward. They trace all of the descendants, generation by generation, down to the present day. It's incredibly painstaking work. It involves searching through birth certificates, death records, census data, marriage licenses, and old newspapers. The genealogists build a massive family tree with hundreds, sometimes thousands, of names. Somewhere in that tree is the unknown person they are looking for. They can then narrow it down by age, location, and other factors. In 2019, the Philadelphia Police Department decided to give it a try. They teamed up with a company called Identifinders International. They took the boy's DNA, which had been carefully preserved, and sent it to a special lab. The lab was able to create a full genetic profile. The profile was uploaded to the genealogy databases. And they got hits. They found relatives. They were distant, but they were there. The work of building the family tree began. It was a massive puzzle. The genealogists worked for years. They focused on the maternal side first, using the mitochondrial DNA they already had. They built a tree that led them to a woman who could have been the boy's mother. Then they started on the paternal side. This was even harder. They had to build another huge family tree. Finally, after 2.5 years of relentless work, the two family trees converged. They found a man and a woman who had lived in the Philadelphia area. The genealogists were confident they were the boy's parents. The police now had names to investigate. They found the original birth certificate for a child born to that couple. In late 2022, the city of Philadelphia held a press conference. The room was packed. For 65 years, the question had been, who was the boy in the box? Now, they had an answer. His name was Joseph Augustus Zarelli. He was born on January 13th, 1953. He was 4 years old when he died. The room was silent. After 65 years, he had his name back. He was no longer America's unknown child. He was Joseph. The police revealed more information. They had identified both of his parents. Both were now deceased. They did not release their names out of respect for Joseph's living sibling. That was another stunning revelation. Joseph had siblings. They were still alive. The police had spoken to them. They had not known about their little brother. This breakthrough solved one mystery but opened up many more. We now know who he was. We know who his parents were, but we still don't know exactly what happened to him. We still don't know who killed him. The identification of Joseph has allowed the police to re-examine the entire case. They now have a family to focus on. They can look at the parents' lives, their circle of friends, their neighbors. The old theories have been revisited. The police have said that Joseph's family is not connected to the foster home that Remington Bristow investigated for so many years. That theory, it seems, was a red herring. What about the story from Im, the woman from Ohio? Her story of a boy named Jonathan who was bought by her abusive mother, was any of it true? It's possible she knew something or heard a story and filled in the blanks with her own traumatic experiences. Or maybe it was a complete coincidence, a false confession from a troubled mind. With Joseph's identity known, her story now seems less likely, but police haven't completely dismissed the possibility that some elements could be true, even if the names were wrong. The investigation is no longer a cold case. It is now an active homicide investigation for the murder of Joseph Augustus Zarelli. The police have said they have their suspicions about who was responsible, but they need evidence to make a formal accusation. It's possible the person or people who killed Joseph are long dead. It's also possible they are still alive. For the city of Philadelphia and for the people across the country who followed this case for years, the news was overwhelming. It was a moment of profound sadness, but also of profound relief. He wasn't just a symbol of a forgotten child anymore. He was a real person, Joseph. He had a birthday, he had a family, he had a name. His story is a testament to the investigators who never gave up. For 65 years, someone was always working this case. Someone always cared. From the first officers at the scene in 1957, to Remington Bristow spending his own money, to the detectives in the 90s, to the members of the Vidocq Society, and finally to the modern forensic genealogist who pieced together his family tree. They all refused to let him be forgotten. It's also a story about the power of science. DNA technology achieved what decades of old-fashioned police work could not. It reached back in time and gave a little boy his identity. What happened to the boy in the box? He was a little boy named Joseph. He was born into a difficult situation. He was abused, neglected, and ultimately killed. His body was discarded in a box in the woods. For 65 years, the world did not know his name. but people never stopped trying to find it. Now they have. The next chapter is to find out who hurt him. To get justice for Joseph, the headstone at Ivy Hill Cemetery will be changed. It will finally bear his name, Joseph Augustus Zarelli. He is unknown no more.